Hello there, good morning and welcome to my little arty corner of YouTube. I say good morning because it's morning here for me. It's nearly 10 o'clock in the morning. I live in the South Wales Valleys in Great Britain, United Kingdom, that place. And so it is morning for me, but it's whatever time of day it is for you. Watching this, I wish you a good one. Amongst other things, I used to be a science teacher, I'm now an artist. There is an overlap, and I'm best known for adult colouring books, including things like Colour Me Calm with Lacey Mucklow and the rest of the Colour Me series, and various books for Dover's Creative Haven and other publishers as well. So it's a long list. I'm not sure how many I'm up to now, but it's a fair number. I must be either at 30 or close to 30 or over 30, I don't know. But anyway, I'm here because I think I've worked out my mission. My mission on YouTube is to bring some kinds of tutorials or how to encourage you to draw and to enjoy that process of drawing and do it for relaxation and without any pressure on yourself to have work that should be on display in a gallery. Personal work, sketchbook work, exercises, practices, things you can use and so on. And my head's been ticking around this for a number of days now because I have to say I have felt like I haven't really had a clear purpose or cause. I don't suppose that's really important, but in some ways it is. And what I'm thinking of doing with today and perhaps after today definitely, is focusing on one motif a day. A series, based on, start with one and then the next one will be a variation of the next one, with the aim that by the end of a week or perhaps a fortnight we filled a sketchbook page with motifs on a theme. But if I do one a day, it gives me a chance to thoroughly look at colouring and shadow and adding pattern and so on. And end up with something that's fairly finished. Possibly. I changed my mind, you know this, but we'll see how it goes. So, in preparation for this, I've been up busy for 3 hours. You can tell, if I get up early and I get at it early, I know my brain's active and things are afoot. So what you can see in front of me are the mediums I'm choosing to use today. I've got a black pen to draw with. I've got a white jelly roll pen for highlights. I have got a graphite pencil and paper stump or tortillon here for shading. I don't know whether I'm going to use that today. I've also got some coloured pencils. These are Derwent Colour Soft. If I use them, I'll tell you the colours. But I am definitely going to use alcohol markers. And these are Ohuhu ones, which are actually budget friendly, and actually they work perfectly fine. Whether they're as good a quality or highly pigmented as say Copics or others, I don't really mind because they function, they do their job. So the ones I've got here, I've got pastel peach, a pastely peach colour, which in Ohuhu is R18. I have a fruit pink, which is R21. Salmon pink, which is YR4, and 2 warm greys, the lightest I've got and the next darkest, just in case I want to use those, because I am going to focus on just one motif today. And I'll show you what I'm sort of like. Shall I show you? Yeah, I'll show you quickly what I've done. This is sketchbook paper. It's the all media paper by C. White, and I wanted to have a go with various things. So this is I've used alcohol markers, drawn the motif with a pen, used alcohol markers, and I did use some coloured pencils to add yellow tones and deeper tones on top of the alcohol markers, and a white gel pen for highlights. This one I used a graphite pencil to add shadow with, and a paper tortillon, and then added alcohol markers on top. This one I used the alcohol markers. Problem with this is it soaks up alcohol ink. It doesn't feather, which is a good thing, but it really gets damp very quickly. And also the colours don't seem quite as clear and vibrant. This one is marker paper, And because it both gets saturated, it gets saturated with marker quickly, but there's a less amount. It's hard to describe. So the colours are paler, and which is what I want. I don't want them all super saturated, but it's also very white, so the colours show through. And I've used various things here. So this one I've used just alcohol markers, which I think I may do today. This one I've used alcohol markers, and instead of the warm grey for shadows, I've used a graphite pencil. There's not a lot of difference between them in some ways. And then this one I've used just one alcohol marker, and then the rest of the colours and shadows were put in with coloured pencils. The greys are smudges. I did not leave the pen dry long enough. It does take a bit longer to dry. My drawing pen takes a bit longer to dry on these papers. So the motif I want to have a look at today is, it's oysteroid, which is a Zentangle pattern. If I remember rightly, this one was deconstructed, or the instructions for creating it were by Enioken. Enioken does fabulous work with dimension and introducing dimension into drawings, I have to say that. So it's well worth having a look at her work. It's E-N-I-N-E and Oken, O-K-E-N. So really like what she does, but I think I've worked out finally that tradition, sort of like the Zentangle format isn't really for me quite. So what you might be noticing is that I am drawing vague repeats of the shape. I'm working in layers here. So this is the top shape. I am going to put another one in there, teeny tiny one, and I am thickening the lines to the left and the bottom, which is my usual way of doing these. So I'm getting close to the edge of my paper here, but I think I'll manage another go around. And I'm adding little shapes or little bumps and what am I trying to say here? I'm not trying to exactly replicate the original shape. I'm trying to vary it somewhat. And if these thicker lines are inconsistently thick, I'm fine with that as well, because it will suggest that this shell, this oyster-like shape, oyster shell-like shape, perhaps varies in thickness. And so I'm going to actually go back as I'm talking about this and deliberately add variation to these sections. So this is a super thick one on the top. Did I just say super something? Dear goodness. So just adding that, it adds some variation. And this is the hard bit, because I now need to let this dry thoroughly before I do anything else. Yeah, perhaps I'll draw. I should have my heat tool out so I can give it a quick dry. No matter. Perhaps I'll draw another one next door in preparation for if I decide to create another. So this one I'm putting the shadow to the left, to the right and the bottom, just for variation, to show you can do it either way you like, but be consistent with the one you're drawing. Although if you don't, you get some very interesting dimensional effects. So play with it, have fun. One of the other things I was doing this morning is partly for my lettering work, but everything overlaps here. It really does. And some of these ideas have been informed by my lettering practice and, you know, getting to grips with how I can use lettering in art. I still haven't got to grips with that, but I'm having fun creating alphabets and letters and using patterns and textures in them. I have. That's very Valleys. I have. I've started to put together a collection of textures in my my sketchbook for that I could use in these kinds of things as well. Some will be Zentangle type patterns, others won't be. And I'm going to be making use of those in this series of motifs. Also, part of my plan is that I know my videos get very long and I say I'm going to finish and then I carry on. So if I stick to one motif, perhaps, just perhaps, I'll try to get, I know some of you love longer videos, but it also, I also have feeling the pressure of needing to get work done, and it does eat into my day quite a bit. But we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm going to take this, not salmon pink, because that's about the darkest colour, this pastel peach colour here. Oh no, before I do that, shadows. Okay, warm grey. And I want to put shadows underneath or outside of these darker areas. And I can change the shapes of these shadows if I wish. And I do want to make them darkest, or thickest, sorry, where the line is darkest. But these would cast a shadow where these lines are. By doing this as well, I can gauge how wet this pen still is. And I am just going to pop, where I've got these little lumps and bumps, I am just going to pop some shadow on those as well. So that's my lightest shadow. And I've got this other warm grey. I'm going to run basically along the pen line, but just so it sticks out a little bit into that warmer grey. And although I'm using alcohol markers, you can mimic this with coloured pencils or any other medium really. As I go outside the line there, that's what happens when you talk and don't pay much attention to what you're doing. But the principles are more or less the same. And I'm going back with the lighter grey colour here, just to blend that darker grey in just a little bit, because some of these lines are quite thick and quite dense. The paler colours act a bit like a bleach. In alcohol markers, you often have a blender pen that's colourless, and it's misnamed. It's not really a blender pen, it's more like an eraser pen. It works. You can use it to help with blending colours if you use it to saturate or to wet the paper with pure alcohol ink solvent before you start adding the colour, and it helps things to blend that way. A bit like putting water onto watercolour paper and putting two different colours on either end of the shape and allowing them to blend, you know, in the water towards the middle to get a nice smooth blend. It's that kind of idea. But alcohol markers are alcohol markers. Okay, so now I've done that, I'm going to take this pale blush colour and I'm just going to fill this in. I'm going to try not to pick up or to go over the pen lines. Yeah, they're still damp, or it's just one of those things. So I've got a bit of smudging going on there, but I'm going to be okay about that because I'm just going to add this colour in. This will dampen the paper. It dries fairly quickly, but not so quickly. the advantage of using alcohol marker paper, or marker paper for alcohol markers, is that the inks won't dry quite so quickly. It's designed to work with the inks. It gets saturated with the inks fairly quickly, but because it stays damp, then it's easier to blend colours on there. So I'm using the R21, which is a fruit pink, and I'm going to use that in the areas where I added the shadow mostly. Say mostly, because I might just put it in for some variation of colour and tone. Look at that. This really picked up some of that ink somewhere. But it'll be okay because this will work its way through. We'll be fine. I'll be writing a note to myself on this. Leave the pen to dry thoroughly, or use a different kind of pen might be a better idea. So I'm putting patches of this lovely pink here, just to add some variation in the colour. No rhyme or reason. Just like you'd get variations in colour perhaps on an oyster shell. Variations in tone to make it a bit more interesting. This really is a pain, all this ink being picked up. Not happy bunny now. Just clean my pen off there. Okay. But as said, I'm not too worried because I'm going to go back. I don't need to let this alcohol ink dry, but I am going to go in and add perhaps a fine lines where I'm going to put some pattern. I think I need a finer pen. Hopefully I've got a finer one in here. Nope, not in this pencil case. I thought I'd organise myself. Do you know that? I really did think I'd organise myself this morning. And the actual reality is I haven't. Jeez. So where is that fine micron? It must be in here. Oh gosh. I bet that was the one that rolled out and landed on the floor. Eek, eek, eek. No, that's an 05. I was using an 01 yesterday, I'm sure I was. There I was, it was there. Just couldn't see it for looking. So this is a line that will add contrast. So I'm using these to create this border that I like between one section and another. At the moment, where that pen is smudged, it looks really mucky. But let's add some pattern in here. And I'm going to go with, I think I'll go with lots of little circles, or sometimes slightly bigger circles, to add some variation, to fill this section in. And then the smudges aren't as noticeable. It's almost like it's just a background colour. My thinking about doing one motif a day is that I know that I can create an awful lot of stuff in a very short space of time. But that doesn't mean that everybody else is able to or would want to. So if I do just one motif to the point where it's finished and try and keep the time a little bit less than usual, about half the usual, then that gives you time to actually literally draw with me, I suppose, or to have a go at drawing, because it won't take perhaps so much time of the day out. I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you think about this in the comments. Just think it's the same way of doing what I've been doing, but just perhaps with a slightly different focus on getting things that are finished. Still sketchbook work, but also getting things finished. So my mind is now thinking, as I talk, I think, you see, is that I still want to do sketchbook work, sketchbook exercises where you sit down with a page and come up with as many ideas or as many variations on a theme as possible. But then I think there's also a lot of value in working with one of those ideas and trying using it to practice media on and patterns and so on. Oh, that feels so much better now I've got some pattern there. It does look a lot better as well, doesn't it? Those smudges have vanished in there. There are some in this outer ring. Oddly, not in this one here. That little bit there is the alcohol ink, so in a moment I'll go back over that. This section here, I'm just going to pop some curved lines in. To give a feeling that this has got some height to it, I suppose. So that works nicely. This one I think I'll leave mostly as it is, though I may go back in a moment and do something there. And I think with this section I'll put the border around the outside edge. It just feels finished then. And here I'm going to, I think I'll pop in this area little arches. I could have done the little circles again, but I think sometimes it's nice to have some variation. So I'm filling in those little spaces next to the curves here as I go along. So it will also give the ink time to dry as I move back towards it. I had a bit of an accident there with my lines, so I'm going to make use of that idea that I'm having wobbly or variations in the thickness of lines and so on as part of the pattern, part of it. And if we're consistent with things, it looks deliberate, and that's fine too. Something doesn't quite work out, it's always a plan to repeat it somewhere else in what you're drawing. Not just one more repeat, but to make it a frequent repeat, I suppose, or something that you do in each part of the motif. So I've got variations in line thickness here, so rather than try make this all one thickness, I thought, right, let's make use of that everywhere and make it a deliberate kind of thing, as if you know, it's exactly what I meant it to be. Perhaps unconsciously that's exactly what it was. So we have that there, and then I'm just going to go around and put little lines at the bottom, longer where the shapes are longer, shorter where they're not, and those tiny ones at the top I may not even get a line in, we'll see, more like a dot. Just adds that little hint of shadow. Like so. So that looks really quite nice. And this section here, I do want to put something in, but what I'm going to do is, rather than a dense pattern like these, I'm going to use my little, almost like little pops of fizz. They're tiny lines that sort of radiate out or trace around an imaginary circle. There's no circle there, but we're drawing the lines as if there was around the edge of the circle. If you find it easier, by all means, use a pencil to draw the circles in. Draw it in very lightly so you can erase it afterwards. It's just an optical illusion, really. So that just adds some texture, because that section without anything in it was standing out a bit. Now it just feels as if it belongs there. So the last thing I want to do with this is to add some highlights. I'm just going to bring some paper in so I can clean my gel pen up and get it working again. Me and gel pens don't really do well together. So I'm going to pop some little white dots at the ends of each of these, where I've got space to do it. So all of these little ones, I don't really have much space, so I'll just not do it. So I've done all of those. I think I'll put one in the middle of each of these little pops. And perhaps some in between, just to add that little hint of something going on. The nice thing about using gel pens on alcohol inks is that they don't pick the colour up. I'm going to put some in, dots in just a small number of these circles there, and I think I'll pop them in between some of these lines here. I actually might end up going around them. Space is too small for the dots to fit in, so they'll go across the line, but I'm happy with that. And that little one at the top, I'm just going to fill it in. So that, I think, has worked out quite nicely. I haven't done anything with this one. Leave that for another day, perhaps. But I think we'll focus on using this, perhaps with different media, different patterns in, and so on, and see how it works out. I do want to have a go at using, to work with alcohol ink as a base colour and then coloured pencils on, and to use a drawing pencil as to give the shadow, so we can blend it out and smooth it out in a way that you can do with alcohol markers but not, and perhaps come back to it on different paper. This is marker paper, not good for wet media. It's not designed for water-based media at all. So a different paper to look at water-based media perhaps, and see how this works out. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Let me know if you'd like to see more of these where I just work on a single motif. Today's is longer than perhaps I'd want it to be because I'm talking a lot more about this. But just one, so we follow it along and we build a page up one thing at a time. Variations of the same thing, but one at a time. So let me know. And look after yourselves. Thank you for joining me, and find time to be creative. Have a good day.